Like every time someone brings up how do you measure your employer brand, it's like you don't actually measure the employer brand. You measure the impacts the employer brand made to the company. What did you want the impact to the employer brand to be for the company? And I swear to God, when I'm in conferences and I stage stuff like that, it's like dogs being shown a card trick. It's like no one wants to kind of get this idea that there is not a number that says my brand is good, my brand is bad. Your brand is not good or bad. Your brand is only strong or weak. It is either crystal clear or murky as shit. Pants on? Okay, good. We're there. We're ready to go. Yeah.
Wallet.
Yeah.
Folks, I am beyond.
You're screwed. You're all screwed.
This could be the one that either gets me fired or job invites in my DMs.
Yeah.
But
that is a bar to shoot for. Okay, got it.
You're either going to get somebody fired or hired, bro. That's
now I know what we're aiming for. Now I know where to put the poll vote. Got it.
Yes. Well, if you have lived in this space for any amount of time, then you have come across this man's work, his voice. I'm sure you've seen him at conferences. You've met him in your local podcast. This gentleman's voice is that of Morgan Freeman in Bruce Almighty. He's employer brand deity status, folks. I am honored to have the one and only James Ellis grace Employer Branding Unfiltered. Welcome to the show, James.
Had I known it was going to be that kind of introduction, I would have gotten the saffron robes out, okay? I would have gone full on, I'm here. I have brought the stone tablets for you. I would have gone full Hare Krishna if that was where we wanted to go, because that's where you're leading me, and I'm there.
I'm happy to take you there. And look, there's always post-edit. I can figure out how to get saffron and robes on post-edit. But yes.
If AI is for nothing, it's for that. That is really what Sam Watson's, that's what he's been working on for years. I got to put some proper clothes on this dude.
That's it. Look, we've got you here, man. I think it's interesting that we are both bearded, which is rare for us. We typically do goatees and, maybe not, rarely clean shaven. We're both Virgos.
Yeah. And 1 day apart.
With 1 day apart, in the middle of a retrograde, folks. This is being recorded on August 22nd, and we've got about 7 more days of a retrograde. So we are both ruled by Mercury, and tech could either fail or the conversation could go epically wrong. So bear with us and enjoy. James.
What's up?
You've got a lot going on, man.
I'm just in my dining room. What are you talking about? I'm just a dude in his dining room with a $30 Amazon light behind him, changing colors ever so slowly, like a professional podcaster would.
Oh, see, mine doesn't. Well, mine might do the.
Yours is a little more.
Colors.
Yeah, you got more glossy. You're fancy. I am more. This is clearly the corner of my dining room with some whiteboard and a poster I printed off from my local Walgreens in their photo booth. Yeah.
Look, I think there's perfection in the flaws, and I don't think you've done anything, flawed in the background. I think it's, it's very minimalist, and I'm here for that because that's the wave right now. But
what the
look,
heck?
you've done a lot, right? Magnanimous introduction aside, I want you to share who you are with those who may not be familiar because they live under rocks.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe it's really like cooling under the rocks. Maybe it's a nice kind of like, it's a very temperate space, no matter how hot it gets outside.
No value under the rock. On the rock.
Under the rock. It's chill. It's cool. I mean, hey, maybe that's possible. I've been doing employer branding for like 10 plus years now. I've done it for an agency. I've done it in-house multiple times. I am a consultant, I guess now, a teacher consultant person. I've done, I'm now on my third, I finished my third podcast, total of 240 some episodes, and about 200 of them are monologues. And honestly, yes, that is the face.
That is so hard.
It's
so hard to do.
I way preferred it. It was so much easier than, the chat. And I feel like and look, you get it. When you're doing a podcast, you're like, look, there are people I really want to talk to. And then you go, now who? And you're like, okay. Oh, hey, that person's got a book. Hey, I'm going to read the back jacket of the book. Yeah, they got a thing. Yeah, sure. So tell me about this time. I can't do that. So it's more like, and honestly, it became a practice more than anything else to help me think through the weird, messy, jumble stuff that happens under this bald, shiny head. It's like there's just so many like voices and things happening. It was like so often I would be like, oh, TikTok is an interesting thing. And then what you realize is that your brain kind of has these weird sparks and they go, this is interesting. And you go, yeah, I will file that under interesting. But that's usually where people stop. When you have a podcast and you have to fill it with 20 to 40 minutes of why? Why do you think that? What are you seeing? In what way is it interesting? For whom is it? Like forcing you to kind of show your work, you realize, oh, maybe I don't really think that thing, or maybe I really do. And oh, wow, it's unpacking in these really interesting ways. So to me, if I'm good at what I do, it was really because of that experience of forcing myself to very publicly say, this is a thing that's interesting, or this is a thing I've been thinking about, and let's unpack it together. And if it resonates and it's useful, run with it, my friends. And if it's not, tell me I'm a moron. You would not be the first. The line starts to the left. Feel free to, bring a patio chair if that's what you need to it's a slow moving line. So that was really kind of where I kind of really planted my flag, I think. And then I wrote a couple books, and then I did some other podcasts with some other people that were really fun. I did one with Marcus Body over at 33, and that was like the nerdiest thing I have ever podcasting. That was super fun. And then I did another one where I said, most of the really interesting thoughts I've had about employer brand come from outside of employer brand. They come from marketing, they come from branding, they come from psychology, they come from behavioral science, they come from strategy, they come from all places. And there are people in all those spaces who I go, oh, they're really smart. Wow, they really know what they're talking about. And so it started when I got Rory Sutherland to agree to a podcast, and I couldn't believe he did it. If you've ever heard of Rory Sutherland, he wrote the book Alchemy, and just do me a favor, spend 5 or 10 minutes hitting YouTube and just type in Rory Sutherland and listen to the crazy person talk. And you realize he is working on a whole different wavelength, and he's way more interesting than anyone you've ever met, and incredibly smart and just super creative thought. And so we started there, and I got people about, organizational change and psychological branding and strategy. Alex Smith was great. Jasmine Bina was great. There's so many great people I got to say, let me finally talk to you. Let me just finally ask you about this employer brand stuff in your space. And so it was so much fun. It was very short-lived, but that's really the other thing I do. So that's called the definition of insanity, because, so much of recruiting is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and then complaining that it's still happening. You're like, we got to do things differently. So it was this whole idea of how do I introduce new ideas into stuff? So, and then now I got a business, and I'm doing stuff, and I'm talking about another podcast thing. I got a newsletter that's been going on for 5 years. How much time? I could really, I do too much. There's something wrong with me.
God.
Doctors have been alerted.
Yeah. He's not even done yet. That's the beauty of it. You are so generous with your or maniacal.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of both.
It depends on which lens, right? It's generous, maniacal.
Yeah.
I'll figure that one out. But you are so generous with the insights and the perspective and I think the inherent desire to see this function evolve.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've always admired and envied that about you, is that you're like down the street and around the corner while most of the folks are still on the porch, right? Trying to figure this out. You're like, here's what's coming.
But the funny thing is I keep posting all this stuff. The newsletter comes out every week, and it's a new idea every single week. Yeah. The podcast did it for a long time. And I just keep waiting for someone to say, no, James, we know that already. Or just something like, no, you are so full of crap. And no one has. And I keep going, well, I'm just going to keep driving the car in this direction until someone stops me. And I'm fascinated that some people kind of go, that's really interesting. I'm going to take it. And it's interesting to me what people take from it and do with it. But it's also fascinating the number of people who go, la, 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 I'm not listening. La, 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 that sounds more like change. No, thank you. And it's like, I can't do that. Yeah. So that's, it's crazy.
And we're going to get into all that. But before we go any further, I have to ask you the question that I ask every guest on employer branding, Unfiltered, which is, when did you first fall in love with employer brand?
I think it was before I even knew what the term was. The idea that, look, I am notoriously, I've been a job hopper most of my life. I've never had a job more than 3 years, and I'm old. Don't let the baby face fool you. The gray, look at that gray. Look at all that. It's all real. There's no dye job there. I'm in pain
that wisdom.
and pain. And so I've been doing this a long time, and I job hop a lot, and it was amazing to see how the job that was amazing and the job that was a nightmare that never seemed to end from the outside looked exactly the same. Or they were both treated the exact same, or they were kind of structured and presented as if, do you want the cake or the ice cream? And in fact, what they were presenting me was, do you want the chocolate ice cream, or no, that's not chocolate ice cream, what that is. And it was just like, if they look the same, how? Look, I'm not an idiot, but I'm not a genius. But honestly, if I can't see the difference, most people are toast. Most people are just hosed. And so that idea has always been kind of in my head. And when I was at TMP and I took over their, what was called inbound, I don't remember what it's called. Inbound marketing. No, it was because it was all content marketing. It was all content and social for our clients. It was really employer brand activation. Here, let me write your social posts. Here, let me write some blog posts. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't until I saw it like that, I went, yeah, if I can't bang the drum that says your job posts suck, please, please, please stop, enough for people to actually change. And I'm not the only one. There are plenty of really, really great people who are banging that drum, and I'm just tapping the hi-hat is really all I could do there. They're really kind of working that bass. If we can't change that, there are other avenues around which to wrap that job posting, which apparently will not change, to make it more useful. And that's really when it happened. It was that sense of, oh, the difference between Hilton and Hyatt from the outside is minimal at best. From the inside, night and day. And the reason for that is employer brand. And if you don't do employer brand, you can't see that difference, and you might as well just start flipping coins. I mean, this is why Indeed works. I don't care. I'll just hit apply until someone calls me back. Guess what? That assumes that you're the same as everybody else, and that every company is the same as everybody else. And I kind of refuse to believe that that's true. So if everybody's different, you got to show off your difference, and that's on both sides. On both sides, everybody's guilty of this. But once they do, amazing matches can happen. And that's really what it's about. So it was definitely when I took over the inbound marketing team over at the agency that I started to see the bigger picture of what this could be, and that's when I fell in love with it. Absolutely.
Wow. And from that point forward, and I'm sure time-wise, there wasn't really a name for what we were doing, or for what we do now, right? It was sort of, can you do social for recruitment, or bring our recruiters into the social media world?
Oh, no, it wasn't even that. It was like, hey, can we get 7 tweets a week? Of what?
It was super tactical.
It was just like the contracts were always hilarious. You're like, when I can just fulfill this by grabbing a tweet from 3 weeks ago and pasting it again. It's like, but what do you want us to say? And so it was one of those onions that you start to go, okay, if I'm now tasked with managing this team of, start off as 7, we ended up as like 18 or something like crazy. And I know it was a crazy 3-year ride. That's for a separate podcast. And there's an agency insider podcast waiting to happen.
Oh my gosh.
And it's called What Got You Here? What was the trauma that brought you to this moment? That's the name of that podcast.
Tell me about your father.
Yeah. Tell me about what horrible thing happened to you and led you to getting to work in an agency,
hurt you?
Yeah, pick it. But yeah, it was
Who Hurt You podcast.
Yeah, it's really what it was. And so you realize if I'm posting these tweets or these Facebook posts and you're like, well, what am I saying? And you're like, oh, I'll go back to like the original materials to say, oh, I'll pull stuff from the career site and kind of you're like, oh boy, they all say the same thing. Uh-oh. And then you realized, okay, everybody's saying the same thing. So how are they differentiating? And so they were playing this game of what I'm now referring to as the game of effort. How many posts can I put out? How much ads can I buy? How many job boards can I post on? How many videos can I make? How many influencers can I buy? It's a game of effort, which in our world is really a game of money. How much money are you willing to spend to make that happen? And the truth is, if you can't differentiate yourself, you are doomed to spend money and compete purely on how high is your pile of cash versus how high is their pile of cash. And again, there's got to be a better way to fight that. And the answer is, yeah, be different. Be somebody else. Show how you're different. And suddenly the amount of money, the pile of cash is secondary at best to how people see you.
Folks, we're not even 15 minutes in yet. You're getting a crash course right now in value. This should be in somebody's college curriculum.
Yeah.
So Yes, and I love the fact of being able to turn the inside out to showcase that differentiation. And you've seen, I think, the evolution of our work, of our space, to the point now where, okay, that's no longer unique. Everybody's turning the inside out
Yep.
and showcasing culture to, I think, the point now where it's like everybody's saying the same thing again. So it's almost like cyclical. What have you seen as the
hold on, I'll
evolution?
take that another step.
Yeah.
We are playing a game of follow the leader. And the leaders we are following are marketing and sales from the business side of things.
Like consumer side.
Yeah.
Consumer
Now, if you read Challenge Your Sale, Sense Making for Sales, Jolt, Brent Adams, and that whole team, they wrote Challenge Your Sale, which, by the way, every recruiter should just read that. It's the best book on how to make a sale and how sales are messy and hard and all that good stuff. But what they found was that 10 years ago, if you were selling a widget or a SaaS or a whatever the heck, everybody says, we have the widget, we have the SaaS. Do you want the widget? Do you have the SaaS? And they realized, you know what? If someone steps up and says, let me teach you all about what it takes to make a SaaS or a widget. Let me show you the people making the widget or the SaaS. Let me show you the future of widgets and SaaS. And so there's this huge shift in sales and marketing towards thought leadership. This was 10 years ago. There's literally a time frame for which there was. Folks, for those of you who don't remember, there's a time in which thought leadership was not a term we all bandied about and called buzzword bingo all the dang time. It was there was an invention 12 to 10 years ago where it was new. The problem was everybody went, ooh, bright and shiny, baby Huey style. Ooh, I want to do that. And so everybody became thought leaders. And so now if you're out buying a thing, and John and I work in similar situations where we sell our offerings to some level, and we are faced with these worlds. For example, if you're trying to hire employer branders, how do you pick? Look, full disclosure, John and I work for different companies and we offer similar things, but for different people. And if you don't know, you don't know. And how do you pick? And so the game becomes less about, let me tell you what it takes to do employer branding. Now the game is not thought leadership because there's so much good thought leadership out there. Every company, every one of our competitors is doing good thought leadership. You're doing it, I'm doing it, everybody else we know is doing it. So it doesn't help us stand out. So now we live in a world of how do we help people make sense of that decision process? Suddenly we're not just saying, do you want employer brand or do you want my employer brand? You're saying, look, what do you want out of employer brand? And let me help you find the right people who can help you make that happen. Recruiting is following exactly the same trajectory. We had a moment where we went, every recruiter has to have a personal brand to be a thought leader. Every employer brand has to be a thought leader. And we are, that train's never late, as the one and only Chris Rock would say, about something completely different. You're welcome, John. I knew you would get that one. That's a whole different podcast. But that train's never late. We're always 2 or 3 years behind what's happening there. And so you're seeing what they're doing and realize, maybe it's time to stop trying to be thought leaders and more trying to say, hey, candidate, how do you choose job A from job B? Let me help you, not just see the differences, but understand why, innovation might serve you. It might, give you some satisfaction or help you develop yourself over the long term. No, what we say is work here, great culture, we're wonderful, 17,000 blog posts, here's the offer. And I think we're asking our candidates to do too much. They don't know how to think through those processes. And as AI and all the other stuff comes rattling through the economy, the concept of jobs is changing fundamentally on so many levels. Again, other podcasts. It's really about saying, how do we make sense of what the job market is? How do we make sense of what the candidates want? Because they all want something different and they all have different reasons why they want something different. And we don't kind of grok to that, and sadly. That is where we are. That is where we need to be heading because that's where the world's taken us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. And it's funny, one of the questions that I had for you coming in, you actually segued into it perfectly, which is, we hear this a lot, and I know you hear it a lot, but somebody will come to you and say something like, James, we need an EVP.
Yeah. No, you don't.
And I know that sets off so many alarms for you. What do you hear when you hear somebody say, we need an EVP?
I was interviewing Bud Cadell over at Nobel, and he deals with organizational change. And he dropped a line on me that I laughed my ass off when I heard it. He goes, he says, the best thing about COVID was that business executives stopped going to airport bookstores and seeing what they were supposed to care about next. Like that was like the super spreader event of stupid thinking. Exactly my thought. I was like, boom, head exploded.
That's strong.
And it's true. It's like these so many leaders who go, well, God, I'm stymied. What's the book of the month? Oh, great. We're all going to do culture change. Oh, we're all going to do, whatever it is. Yeah. I almost actually forgot like the
like
question.
The airport book club of the month, right?
Yeah, it's horrible.
I mean, what do you hear when you hear somebody say, James, we need an EVP? What
I hear is you just at the bookstore and you saw the book that says, okay, what you need is a better employer brand. What you need is a better hire and talent, all the good stuff, and an EVP is the way to do it, as if the EVP is some sort of tool that will rotor your pipes and clear everything out and make everything squeaky clean and all sorts of good stuff. And that's not even remotely the case. And look, I come from a world where I want to get it done as fast as humanly possible, make it incredibly effective, and that does not align with a lot of companies. Like there are a lot of companies who are too big where that kind of quick change will literally break companies, will literally make people kind of go bleh, and their just brains will explode, and that's that. I work with smaller companies who need to be agile because they're competing with the bigger companies. You tend to work with companies that are bigger. They have different constraints in different situations. Sure. An EVP, as we know it, as defined and as we see it, is not for my companies, it's for your companies. They're big structural ideas that are meant to be the tent poles around which for the next 3, 5, 10 years, companies start to build themselves around. When you're 300 people and you don't know if you're going to be here in 2 years, not helpful. And the timeline it takes to build an EVP for larger companies or global footprint companies or like all the stuff, that doesn't work for a 300, 500, 2,000, 1,000 person company. They just need a direction now. And honestly, every time I say EVP, I know there's a whole section of the population who goes, let me just put my hand over my wallet to make sure no one has picked it. And also I know exactly what those things cost. I'm like, no, you don't. So I try really hard not to ever say the word EVP unless I know the person who I'm talking to needs to hear the term EVP. I talk in terms of a brand direction, a reason why you're different, a reason people choose you. Is that the same as an EVP? Yeah, like pretty much, except it doesn't come with the baggage of like every time, look, and I'm guilty. I'm not accusing anybody of nothing that I haven't done myself. I am guilty, my friends. Bring forth the handcuffs. The bailiff has some work to do here. I have sold my share of pillars, and we call them pillars because they sound expensive, right? The reason the concierge at the hotel is called a concierge and not guy who lives here and kind of knows stuff is because they can charge more for it. That's just the game. The pillars are just, okay, if this is your big idea brand of how you're different, tell me how you make that real, or tell me what that means to me. That's what a pillar means. And I think there's so much kind of like baggage around modern employer branding so that it can get sold and accepted by leadership. And I think that dilutes the value and power of it. And so I'm doing my really steady best to not play that game. It's not easy to not play that game, but I'm doing my best.
Look, man, the way you feel about the letters E, V, and P are the same way I feel about the letters D, E, and I. That is a whole nother podcast.
That is. Let's call Torin. Where's Torin?
Where's Torin?
Let's get Madison. Where's Madison? Let's throw down.
That'll be done.
I'm telling you. Book that.
Itself. That's going to be a great show. Look, you are spot on. And EVP, when I hear an executive say we need an EVP or a TA leader say CHRO, this is top on their priority on their roadmap this year. Okay, what do you want it to do for you?
What do you think you're getting out of it? What problem is it solve? Yeah, and that to me is the crux of everything that does not work inside of recruiting, employer brand, EVP, all that work, is that it's a magic wand. It's fairy pixie dust. You sprinkle it on and everything is magically better. And the truth is, when you drop $10, $40, $100,000 on an EVP, you didn't just assume it was going to make things magically better. You're not that dumb. You had a problem that was there to solve. And don't laugh too hard at that because I know you had some thoughts and we don't have to get too far. No one's getting fired this way. I'm sure you did. That's unusual. You had a problem. Like every time someone brings up the how do you measure your employer brand, it's like you don't actually measure the employer brand. You measure the impacts the employer brand made to the company. What did you want the impact to the employer brand to be for the company? And I swear to God, when I'm in conferences and I stage stuff like that, it's like dogs being shown a card trick. It's like no one wants to kind of get this idea that there is not a number that says my brand is good, my brand is bad. Your brand is not good or bad. Your brand is only strong or weak. It is either crystal clear or murky as shit. Like Goldman Sachs, who was my favorite punching bag because they can afford it, can buy and sell me for lunch, and before we get very far. I would never want to work there. They have a strong employer brand. Hell yeah. One of the strongest, I would say. They are crystal clear on what they offer. They are crystal clear on who's going to be great there. They're crystal clear on what you should expect. Do I want that? But is it clear? Yes. And that's the game we're playing, is that it's not about good or bad. It's about strong and weak. And if it's strong, it's solving a problem. If it's weak, it's not. And when you start to change the language around employer branding and what you want it to do, you suddenly realize it really is less magic and alchemy and a little bit more plumbing. And that's not a bad thing.
Dude, you just answered. So I've been trying to push, right, our function forward, or at least those who are engaging us for what we do, to think not about how can we package all the great things about your culture and put it into storytelling and all the things that are table stakes, but what are the soft, white, ugly underbelly of your organization that people should know about before they apply? Not even should not know about. They're going to find out about anyway before they get there and when they get there, that you had a chance to tell them first, right? And I think Goldman Sachs, the Goldman Sachs, and no shade,
none.
Actually shouts out to Goldman Sachs because they are very clear on who they are not.
Exactly.
And people still run through brick walls to work there, right?
Yes.
So that should be, I think, the epitome of what we should be chasing after.
Yeah.
How can you clearly be known for some of the hardest, grueling, grind out work, but we're going to give you the prestige of having our name on your resume, the skill set to be competitive and go out and hunt in any space in this function, right?
And the cartoon sack of cash with a dollar sign on it that happens when you're like 34, 38, something like that, when you start vesting like a crazy person.
Absolutely. You'll be stupidly rich, right?
Yeah.
That kind of notoriety is what
clarity.
Is like the essence of
clarity.
What you want. That clarity that
no one
that's
goes.
What I think
no one goes. No one goes Goldman Sachs. I'm thinking I'm working there because I hear they do really good work saving the whales. No one.
Not at all.
No one thinks that. No one says, I like Goldman Sachs. They're doing a really good job with the climate. No one thinks that. Everyone knows exactly what they're doing, exactly what the value of that is, if define your value however you like. And they also know the value to the candidate. It is crystal clear. It is an incredibly strong brand. The problem is... Go ahead.
Sorry.
You're good.
I was just going to say, to the point of if they tried to sell like fluff and roses and champagne, it would hurt them. It would hurt their brand.
Yeah. And they do a fun job.
No.
Yeah, they do a fun job. They play a little game on their career site. They don't ever say, come here and get a pile of cash. But those are some nice clothes they're wearing. Those are some nice watches. Like, they're subtle cues. Yeah, they let you know what's really going on. But we have a diverse, open culture. We care about our people. You're like, care about your people. We're all defining that a little different. Yeah, it's like we're going to define that term a little differently, I guess, apparently in this conversation. But it's crystal clear what they're offering. And look, the thing that I think gets us in trouble, if we want to go back historically, I'm going to blame Glassdoor. Why? Because it's so much fun. Join me. Welcome. The water is delightful. Bring a cocktail. Look, Glassdoor spent a lot of money and then made 10 times, 100 times more, convincing us all that little number in the corner of that page was our score, that meant something about our company, that said something about who we were, and that is a lie. What that number says is this is how well you've set and met your expectations. If you say this is a really hard place to work and you're going to grind your ass down to a nub and it's going to be brutal, it's going to be hard, but in the end you get this, 5 stars, because that's exactly what you experienced. If you say it's wonderful, it's puppy dogs, it's daisies, it's tickle fights, we're all having a great time, have a pizza, have a hug, whatever you need, pass the joint on the left-hand side, and you don't deliver, 2 stars. Even if your culture is pleasant and nice, if you're not meeting expectations. And that, to me, is the crux of how we should be thinking about employer brand. It's neither good nor bad. It's what is the expectation you would like to set and how well are you meeting that expectation? And bonus points if you can show how those expectations are different than working at literally millions of other companies just like yours. I think there's still all this vestigial thinking that, oh, we're just the only plumbing company in Akron, or we're the only, hedge fund doing this. Like, no, there's not only anything. You know how many AI companies there are right now? It ain't just OpenAI. There are a lot. And OpenAI has lots of room to run, but they don't pretend that they're the only ones. And so once you realize that you have a lot of competition in all sorts of phases, you have to start realizing you can't just say we're good, we're great, we're wonderful, we're nice. You have to say how you're different from other places, because choosing a job is a choice, meaning I choose this and I do not choose those. That is crucial. And I think we ignore that so much because it's hard to have that conversation.
Dude, that's like, I think that should be, we need to figure a way to make that a metric. In the candidate experience, how well did this experience match the expectation you had from the marketing we put in front of you?
Oh, yeah.
That is the measure of success or impact. Is it strong or weak of your employer brand, right? Like,
yep.
Did the marketing match the reality?
I would take it a step further because I'm just that salty. And that's the nicest way to put that.
Come on.
Every time someone puts together an employee experience survey, and it crosses my desk and someone asks my opinion, I go, you don't actually want my opinion. They go, why? Because there's a question I want to put on there that you will never, ever in a million years put on there, but it's the whole Megillah. It's the whole picture. It's everything you want to know. And that is real simple. Now that you work here, would you work here again? Now that you know, would you still have joined? Oh, that's a kick in the... I mean, that is hard. That is hard, but it is real because that's what it's all about. Did you make a good choice?
Could you get an honest answer to that, though? Right? Especially if they're still there.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You have to assume lots of, anonymous-ing, but I don't care I don't care who's saying it. I want to know 89%. Yeah, 89% says now that they work here, they would say, yep, I made the right choice. And how many people said, what on earth did I get myself into? And then you get to go things like, oh, well, there's the sales team. Interesting. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that becomes the measure of how effective. A couple of things. It's not necessarily a measure of the brand. It's did the infrastructure, your direct hiring manager, the way that the executive leadership communicates, did you feel connected? A lot of those things are outside of our purview.
100%.
However, what got you here, what made you aware of us is 100% in our purview, in the sense that we can control the narrative to some extent, right?
And that's because a brand is a mental construct. I love when people say, oh, well, let me go change the brand. You can't. The brand doesn't sit in a drawer. It doesn't sit in a file. It's in thousands, if not millions of people's heads. Change that.
Peer distributed.
100%. And change that. What is that? And honestly, you don't even know what it is because everybody has a slightly different picture of that particular elephant, right? So people pretend like they know and own a brand. It's like you don't. All you can do is influence. And so, but the brand is just a construct to say, how do we make it more clear that we are more A and less B? That's because it's solving the problem. Look, you've got EY and KPMG. Again, to my eyes, same company. Might as well just swapping some letters. It's the same, right? Who cares? PwC. It's again, why always the letters? Why always just the act?
It's easy.
I guess so. It means nothing. It can be anything. Whatever.
Because nobody wants to hear 3-4 rich old dead white guys' names and remind them that they work there.
Don't be too. Don't be
quiet.
No. Don't do that. That's the inside voice.
We love the acronym company.
Sure. Let's go for that.
Moving on.
But to me, I don't see a difference. And for them, they use the brand to say we are slightly more X, and it's a North Star that they can use. But it's a tool. It's not a thing. It's a tool that changes things. So what did you want to change? And that's why the measurement of the brand is a stupid question. It's a question of what did you want the brand to do for you? How do I measure the hammer? It's a hammer. Is it a good hammer? Yeah, it puts the nails right in the wall just the way I want it. Then it's a great hammer. That's the measurement, not how do you measure a hammer? I don't get it.
Can we make the hammer electric? Can we add AI to the hammer? Like at some point you're getting away from its core purpose. So,
exactly.
So all of this absolutely spot on and fascinating, but how do you make that clear and relevant for the CHRO and the CEO who's like, yeah, but I just want more hires because we have this big thing that we're hiring for, and we need an EVP for that.
Yeah, it's that you just described it. The biggest challenge of the last 2 years of my life. So it's hard to get people to get this because there's so much handed down knowledge of this is what employer brand is. It's about making my company look good. It's about getting more applicants. I'm like, it's none of those things. It's really like, to me, it's how do you change the language? So I've trained, so a couple of kind of like, to me, the big hooks about these are the things, if I had the magic wand, it could change people's language. I would say it's not about applications, it's about hires. And the second you start to change that metric, it changes how you see the problem and it changes how you see the opportunity. If you're trying to hire someone great, you're not trying to collect 100 applications, you're trying to hire someone great. Well, what does great mean? What does great look like to you? How does great interact with this thing? I just saw an article, I think it was not Harvard Business Review, but one of those kinds where it says, turns out teams that work well together outperform rock stars all the time. But rock stars are obviously good at what they do, and so they're easy yeses. For a company, they're an easy yes. They're a rock star. They invented a thing. They wrote a book. They did whatever it is. Yes. But it turns out horrible teammates, and they disrupt like crazy. They're poisoned very often in a lot of ways. But you put 4 people who know how to work together really well, they come up with better work. They outperform, but it's really hard to understand, well, what goes into a team? Do I want 4 the same? Do I want 4? How do I mix them together? It's harder. And so very often CHROs go, that's an impossible question for me. I'll just go with what is easy and accessible. So how do we start to change the language to how do you get the hire, not the application? And that changes the technology and the platform and the expectations and all that good stuff. The other one is, go ahead.
I was just going to say that also highlights the difference between employer branding and recruitment marketing.
Yeah.
Which oftentimes get, thrown out there synonymously. It kills me slowly.
And that's a great point because I think they are so different in what they're trying to do. And so allow me to draw a line here because I think it's another good point to make that recruitment marketing is about saying, if there's someone out there looking for a job, recruitment marketing increases the likelihood that they will see your job and therefore increase the likelihood that they will apply for the job. Now, in general, 10 to 20% of the workforce is actually looking for a job. Right now, according to Joel Cheeseman's article he posted from something or other, he says record highs, 28% of people looking for jobs, which is great, except there's 72% of people who are not on your job boards. They're not on your LinkedIn. They're not looking at your videos that say, we're great. They're not going to even notice the we're hiring posts that you're spending and wasting your time on. They are about something else. And brand is not about getting people who are looking for a job to say yes to your job. Brand is about saying, hey, everybody who's not looking for a job, let me tell you a story that is not too useful now, but will be the next time you start looking for a job. It is radically different. And that is how, because recruitment marketing is all about in-market audiences, and employer brand start their work on an out-of-market audience.
That's right. Yeah, I always liken it to the dating market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, employer branding is this is the first date, the second, the third date, to get you to popping the question, right? To get you to say yes at some point. But ultimately, if you're not going in with the intention of getting married, then I'm not even dating.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
So thank you for establishing that difference between the two, because it's something I think our audience can leverage when they're having these conversations with their leadership.
And I'm not trying to be pejorative. I'm not saying recruitment marketing is bad. I'm saying it's solving a particular problem, and employer brand solves a radically different problem. You can't use the screwdriver and the hammer on either problem together. I mean, it doesn't work that way.
Two different objectives.
Very different.
You're absolutely right. So with all of that said, I want to get into a little bit of tactics with you. You have an interesting take, and I've always been fascinated by the way you look at the basics within EVP employer brand, like the tacticals. Yes, you need research. Yes, you need creative, and then you have to figure out a way to tell people about it, right, to activate. From a research perspective, you've worked at firms that actually all they do is research
exactly
in various facets, and then you've also formulated your own opinion based on what you've seen work. What do you think is missing, or most people are looking at the research elements of employer branding wrong?
I think, and this is me being blunt. What? Weird.
Employer branding unfiltered? No.
I might as well start now, right? I might as well.
Wrong show,
Yeah. Look, when a company that does research, they do it with the intention of selling it to you. I don't begrudge anybody making money. I'd love to make some more myself. I hope all of us make a lot more money next year. Mazel tov to you, whatever it takes. Exactly. But the thing is that when you do research, the research has to change on a regular basis for it to be valuable the next year. Otherwise, you buy it once and you're like, okay, this is probably true for the next 5 or 10 years. And there's no repeat customers, and it's really hard to make a living that way. So what they do is, a particular company we're talking about, who we don't need to name, they're wonderful people. They do good research work. But what they've done is they've made a model that's 40 different factors of what people care about in a job. And I think that's insane. I think that is so boiling the ocean. Yes, there is an audience who says how a company treats LGBTQ workers is the 7th of 40 most important factors I care about when choosing a job. What am I supposed to do with that? That's nice to know. And, okay, what were the first 6? If it turns out that everybody cares about making piles of cash, and that's everybody's number one answer, who cares what number 2 is? Who cares what number 7 is? Who cares what number 27 is? So they use research, and it becomes something akin to fashion. Hey, it becomes the reason to have a press release. Hey, this is the year that work from home went from the 4th most important thing to the 2nd most important thing. That's a press release, and that's how the game gets played. Does that change what you offer? I hope not. I hope that's
in cases it did.
Well, no. What happens is everybody sees that research and said, "Oh, I guess we have to start talking about work from home now." Well, do you offer it? That's a separate conversation. So how can So they're trying to solve 2 different problems. So I'm trying to think in terms of candidates. Turns out are human beings. Who knew? And as human beings, they ultimately care about a million different factors, but you can boil those million different factors into 3 buckets, and that is, what is the goal or mission purpose of this company, right? If you're SpaceX, if you're World Wildlife Federation, if you are, I don't know, pick it, a company, or Patagonia, REI, anything truly mission driven, positive or negative, run by Elon or not, whatever. And let's be fair. And that's like 5 or 10% of all companies that are truly mission driven, where the mission differentiates them relative to other companies. Now, if you're not one of those 5 or 10% of companies, don't worry. You focus on the experience. This is what we offer. It's work from home. It's cooperation. It's collaboration. It's competition. It's performance. It's autonomy. It's whatever. And I really think that 50 to 70% of companies find their difference in there. They say, how do we treat our people? How do we work together? Look at Netflix. Netflix is not a performance-driven company. They have defined in amazing ways how people work together to create a certain kind of culture, and they've documented it very well, and that's what makes them different. Even a Roku, who effectively was spawned out from that culture and said, ooh, we're stealing all those ideas, not the same, right? So it's the experience, and what makes that experience different? Well, some companies don't bother trying to be different in how they do that stuff. And so you're left with a 3rd bucket, which is the reward. How much money are you paying them? What do the bonuses look like? What do promotion structures look like? But also, what is the level of professional development? What is the level of status you're offering people? So you either helping people achieve something big, and if you can't help them do that, make their day-to-day more powerful, profitable, delightful, wonderful, whatever you want to think about it is. And if you can't do that, how are you paying them? Because that's, in the end, all people want to know. What are we doing? How do we do it? What do we get when we do it? Those are the only 3 questions that matter in employer branding for me, because I am a reductive, bring it all down to simplicity as much as you can kind of guy. And if you can't find your difference in one of those 3 buckets, I got a question for you. Why do you exist? If you can't be different, look, I got to guess that Tide and all are different products. All evidence to the contrary. I couldn't tell you the difference to them, with a microscope, or an electron microscope. There's a difference for them. Like, one of them is the cheap one is the expensive one, right? One is the no perfume and super sensitive, and one is the will perform super well. They have differences, and if they don't, they didn't exist. So when companies like to, especially boring companies, self-proclaimed boring, I would never call any company boring, but they think, oh, we just make bottle caps or whatever. You're like, yeah, I guess that might be boring in a way, but there's something about you that's interesting. I guess it's not going to be the mission. So is it going to be the reward or is it going to be the experience? Let's dive into that. That's where I focus.
I think there's, and I love the reductive approach, because at the end of the day, if you can't strip it down to its bare essence and articulate it, then you don't understand it, or it's not that different.
And anything you're building on top of it as a brand becomes more kabuki theater than meaningful differentiation. Yeah.
100%. But I also wonder, have we overcomplicated it, right? So, because I get reductive too. I revel in the reductive. Have we overcomplicated this in the sense that at base level, the company is here to make profit?
Yes.
101.
Yep.
And in order to do that, we have to achieve profitability through productivity at reduced overhead costs.
Yes.
So we need the best labor at the lowest price.
To a point, yes. And there are some roles
that the market will have to offer in our vicinity and whatever.
Yes. But let's also differentiate, because I had this conversation with someone else and they say, look, Frito-Lay's opens up their driver job roles for like an hour once every 2 or 3 months, and they get all the roles they need filled that way. I said, yeah, because there's no such thing. But no, there's no such thing as a great truck driver. There are all good truck drivers. The value of getting the best truck driver is immaterial to the bottom line of the company. Now, product development, whole different ballgame. You may want the rock star. The salespeople, one salesperson outperforms about a 2 to 3x time than the mediocre. And when there's a differentiated in value to the company, you absolutely focus on hiring the best. But there are 100%. Lots of companies, there are lots of jobs that are commoditized. They are meeting a certain threshold, fill it as fast as possible, as cheaply as possible.
Absolutely. So again, the point being, obviously, the higher the value that somebody delivers, right, whether it's specialization, scarcity in the market, whatever the case may be, yes, they will command a higher price and obviously be harder to find in the market. Those who are abundant because it's low
differentiated
differentiated effort, but there's plenty of people that could do this work, tend to drive lower costs. My point being is, we've tried to complicate, I think, in a way, how we articulate this to be attractive, right? Like, as an organization, we need a job to be done. You can do this job, and there's hundreds of thousands of people like you who can do this job, or there's like 75 in the world who can do this job. But either way, I need you to know who I am.
Yes.
And I need you to want to come work for me.
Yes.
And I'll figure out how much I can pay you that makes that enticing.
And that becomes
that's it at base level.
Yeah, and that's kind of how those two negotiate that price. And there's a lot of other factors to it. But yes, absolutely. Sure. There is a supply and demand. There is a expectation of that. But also, is the volume of potential hires 12 people or 12 million? And that is a different thing. And I think those audiences expect different things. I don't think the person who is there to, and anything I pick here will be sound pejorative, it's not meant to be, filling tires on an assembly line, putting air in the tires. A lot of people can do that. But yet somehow the guy who's the new CEO at Starbucks can say, yeah, I know you're all in Seattle. Turns out I'm in California. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you buy me a jet. I'm going to fly in every couple of days. We cool? We cool. And only companies do that when they say there's a value for that. We can argue over what that value is or if that's true and whatever. But if the person putting air in the tire can't show how they're more valuable than others, they're just a commodity. And it gets really complicated on how do you pick. It becomes thresholdness. And then you go, well, the other part of it is, and I alluded to this earlier, AI and the changing how work is, companies that are good at saying, the job I need filled today is X. But I also know in 2 weeks, and let's be fair, that's how long it takes to fill a job, the job's going to have changed. Like, have you ever gotten a job where it was as written? No, you haven't. No, you have not. And I'm going to put money on the table saying that's never happening. Why? Because the world changes too fast.
Yeah, and that's why that clause of and other duties as assigned.
Yeah, what they said is we lack imagination in thinking about what this job could do. Also, we're talking about we're bifurcating jobs into two groups, and one of the ways we could do that is to say there is one way to do the job well. There are many ways to do the job well, and those are very different situations. If there is one way, Taylorism can make the air go into that tire in the fastest way possible. There is one way to do it. Hire an amazing salesperson. The job of the salesperson is not to say, open up Salesforce and plug in the numbers. The job is to say, how do you get people to say yes to what you have to offer? And some people say, I'm going to put on events. And some people say, I'm going to build amazing content. And some people say, I'm going to camp out in people's offices. And some people say, I am just determined as all get out to annoy their staff and executive assistant until they give me the meeting or whatever. Like, there's a million ways to do the job, and we can't assume we know as hiring managers or bosses that we know the best way. And so we're looking for achievement, outcomes. And when you have people who can achieve those outcomes creatively, we also know not only will they do the job we've asked them to do, they're opening the door to new skill sets that we didn't even know we needed today. Go back 10 years. Sales teams who thought, well, the job of sales is just picking up the phone or emailing people until people said, yeah, I'll take the meeting. And then someone said, what if I write a video series about what it's like to do this work and what it's like to buy this product? Suddenly, content marketing takes off, and it's crazy. It's like, oh, wow, there's a whole new way of doing marketing and sales. That happens every day, and I think the technology surrounding us is only going to amplify and speed up that process. So employer brand is less about how do I get someone who can do job X to fill the seat the way I told them to do. It's more about how do I stack my own internal deck such that when the shit or the negative shit comes and hits us, I'm prepared. Because I have new skill sets, maybe I haven't tapped them yet, I have new ways of thinking, I've got flexibility, I've got creativity, I've got whatever that is, because I simply don't know the future. And I think companies are slowly starting to realize, for all their forecasting and budget processes, which assume that there are right ways of doing things, everybody's making it up, nobody knows what the hell's going on, nobody's got a crystal ball that works, everybody's terrified of the future, so you might as well bring in people who go, you know what, I don't know what the future is, but I'm willing to be in your band, I'm willing to be in your tribe, I'm willing to play my part and do the other duties as assigned based on how the world works. Or you're going to get the person who says, that's not my job, I'm out. That's the difference.
Ooh. Masterclass, folks. I want to switch gears because I think that is a great jumping off point into the future of this work. And I think we're getting a taste right now, and I'll save AI for, give me a second on that one. But we're in a landscape right now where we have companies who have made some very big commitments in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the pandemic and so forth. And then 4 years later, we have companies who are absolutely walking all of those back, obliterating the teams they hired.
Yeah.
And
who's George? Who's that? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, like 2020, that year doesn't exist.
No.
So I know people who are heading up global employer brand for some of those very companies who have publicly walked them back due to the pressures that they're receiving from, let's say, activist investors and shareholders, or just very loud voices that,
or just news media. We don't have to name names.
Either way,
yeah.
There's a perceived threat to revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. How do you brand in that kind of environment when that is your role, right?
Yeah.
To make this company attractive, appealing, and build awareness when you're in the headlines for some of the wrong reasons. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I'm not a basketball guy, but I will say that Michael Jordan is no idiot, and he was a very smart person who says Republicans buy sneakers too. When he was asked, why don't you say more stuff about X, Y, and Z, he goes, Republicans buy shoes too, dude. I ain't doing that. And he is a man with a focus, and he knows what he wants, and he knows what he's trying to do, and it's amazing. And the thing is, we don't sell shoes. We sell jobs, which is really effectively selling lives, opportunity, shape. And I think one of the many drums I beat is this idea that in sales, every dollar is a good dollar. Doesn't matter where it came from. Doesn't matter who wanted it. If the check cashes, yes, good. Everybody counts that as a win. But in recruiting, every application is not a good application. In hiring, every hire is not a good hire. Right. There are good matches. There are people who align. There are people who understand. There are people who are achieving the goal. There are people who are staring at the same North Star and saying, yep, I think I can help get us there. And the truth is the company has to say what they stand for. And that stance might be, we refuse to stand for anything. And that is just as valid, disagree, just as valid an approach as saying, this is bad and we will not stand for this, whatever the this in that sentence needs to be. Mm-hmm. The more you turn the volume up on that stance, any of those stances, the more the people who agree with those stances say, yes, I want to be a part of that. And the thing we need to get past was this idea that there's only one person who's a perfect hire. Too much of recruiting historically has been about assuming there's always more fish in the sea. There's always so much stuff. So we don't mind, collecting 200 applications and telling 199 of them to go pound sand and saying, hey, that one person, congratulations, you're a winner. Except you just pissed off 199 people who are never, ever, 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 ever going to apply for you again. You might as well have painted, you suck on their back, right? And I love the hiring managers who say, well, there's two candidates. One's great and one's a reject. The hell does that even mean? That person's amazing at what they do. You just don't need them now and you've decided not to value them. Okay. The truth is there's abundant talent out there. And the more they understand what you're about, what you stand for, what your mission, what your experience, what your goal is, the more they will say, I am willing to move across town. I am willing to move across state. I am willing to be joining your particular direction. The world is a very, very small but a very, very big place. And if you say you can't find talent, what you're saying is, I refuse to offer people something worth buying. If you have a problem hiring and it's because you think you've got this stance that you have to make, Fox News doesn't not make money. They've got a lot of money because millions of people watch that thing. I'm not one of them, but a million people. And so if you are going to go full on Republican and right wing and all that stuff and you decide to take a stand, plenty of people will buy your product, plenty of people will work there. And conversely, plenty of people on the other side too who say, yep, I want to join that. I think that this is wrong. I want to help do that. You just have to make it crystal clear. And the problem is most companies are so terrified that they're going to piss off the other side. They won't be able to sell them shoes, that they say nothing, and they end up caught in the middle. They end up getting crushed in the mushy middle. Instead of taking a stand, one side or the other, we can go full on Mr. Miyagi. There's a yellow line in the middle, and if you walk it, you're going to get crushed just like grape, right? That is what companies are preparing themselves for. You have to pick a side. Now, I'm a political science by training, if you can believe it. I think the splits that we've seen are slowly fractioning, and which sets us up for a coming together on a couple of levels that it's going to be nice after the last 10 years of this nonsense. And so I think the change and the fear of, okay, we have to pick a side or that's going to ruin our business, I think that's going to ebb. But I still think companies need to pick a side to say, this is what we're all about. This is what we stand for. This is what we offer. This is the experience of working here because this is who you're going to be surrounded by. That is just as pertinent to the offer as the salary on the offer letter. We just don't treat it as such, and we need to. We need to take the entirety of the work experience, the mission, and the reward as seriously as the number on the offer letter.
Yeah, I think those are brilliant points, and not having a position is still a position. And I think
100%.
You articulated that. And then, you add the dynamics of trying to attract, engage, and retain talent in an election year or an election cycle.
It's always, but the thing is, it's always an election cycle. Sorry. It ain't never changing.
That's what people forget, right?
Yeah.
So, the local, state and local is always going. But, but point being, I've heard candidates reject offers based on who companies or CEOs or C-suites have donated to, which campaigns they donated to. Funny enough, a lot of those big companies donate to both sides.
Yes.
So it's, but again, the task is now, how do we stay out of that mix for fear of what it could do to the corporate brand side or the consumer brand or revenue generating, but still attract talent, knowing that these are full sentient human beings who have opinions, views, right, and all those things. I think that's a challenge that I don't know. I don't see that going away anytime soon. I think it will ebb, to your point.
Yeah.
There will be cycles of it and waves, but I think right now it's probably one of the hardest markets from a labor market and political landscape to be an employer brand voice.
Yeah.
We're trying to tell stories that don't jump into the landmine field. But
there's just as much of a strong story. This is we're open to all views. Look, I lived in Madison for 8 years, and the joke in Madison was the only thing they can't tolerate is intolerance. Like that was that joke. It was like they're so very much that thing, and better or worse, whatever. I think companies need to embrace that. They need to say, look, we have to be okay hiring the Republican developer along with the LGBTQ project manager or vice versa, whatever that is, and say, look, we're all here to make money. Have your personal beliefs on your own time. Yeah. That's who we are. This is what we're trying to achieve. And the problem is very often employees will force the issue. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying that is where the crux of the matter becomes. That we've now expected companies to take these stands. And as employees, we say, I'm associated with this company. They need to have the same stand I have. And I'm sorry, look around. It's a big company. You got 20,000 people who work there. They don't all have the same views. And so how can a company do that? And so there is a space for a company to say, look, we're here to achieve a financial fiduciary goal. And we do that by bringing in the best people, which allows an open conversation, and keep your politics at home. Vote how you want to vote. And then you have to have the conversation, to your point, of leadership to say, maybe stop giving money to these people. Maybe stop deciding that the way the political game gets played is by spending as much money and putting it across both sides of the table. It's only going to bite you in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the key point in that is, how do companies get this notion of we to become the North Star driving force instead of I?
Yeah.
And I think we've spent a lot of time on the I, and we're coming to an organization where, look, we're a mass of people from way different backgrounds, varying experiences and so forth, but we have come together at this company to do X, Y, and Z together.
Companies exist purely for the ability of individuals to come together and achieve more than they could individually. It's the sole reason a company exists, if you get down to it. That's the only reason we do it. So let's embrace that idea of it has to be together. I mean, Johnny Ives is super smart and he did amazing design work, but there were about 4 trillion other people behind him doing great work too to make the Johnny Ives-ness of Apple be that thing. It has to be together or it doesn't work.
I miss Johnny Ives. I mean, oh gosh, he changed the world for Apple. So look, I want to be conscious of time, man. I could talk to you for days. This is such a rich conversation, and I think we've only scratched the surface. So obviously, I want you back. But in our final segment,
hold on. My head went to Jackson 5. I'm sorry. It just went there.
I want you back.
I went, who's going to start singing first? Oh boy, who's going to violate copyright first?
Nope. I want this to play on YouTube with no issues. So in our final segment, before you get out of here, answer a question, leave a question.
Yep.
In which case, I will share a question with you that came from a prior guest, and then I'll get you to leave one for our next guest on your way out. So the question is, in this resource-constrained environment,
someone knew I was coming.
If you were gifted the gift of one new headcount, what would you hire for and why?
I'm the wrong person to ask that to, because I'm a company of one.
Well,
so
hey, even more of an impetus to have headcount.
Yeah, the headcount.
Who's granting you that headcount?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's you, but
yeah, the headcount is just going to do my books and my taxes. Don't ever make me think about that ever again.
Yeah, we'll fractionalize that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, imagine you're at an organization heading up employee brand.
I think it is depending on whether the gap is. And I think a lot of companies, it's a writer. For a lot of companies, it's a videographer or a storyteller. And when I say videographer, I don't mean the person who holds the camera. I mean the person who can see how the words being said turn into meaning. Like someone who is more of a documentarian. Like to me, there is such a rich vein of journalists and documentarians to help us not tell a story, uncover the story, uncover the myriad of ways in which our brand, which is just a couple of words on a slide deck, let's be honest, has meaning. And I think, one of the topics we didn't get into is so fraught with semiotics, is this idea of what the heck does that brand mean? And isn't that like 99% of our job is to give the brand those words some meaning? And documentarians, first off, they don't get paid much. So yeah, you're getting a bargain, whatever you're hiring them. 2, they have technical skills you don't got. You just do not have. Trust me, working a good camera is real work, and zooming in and getting all that. Trust me, having worked with one once, it was like, damn. I mean, it was mind blowing, and I was so impressed. They are the person I would do for whatever work I'm doing, to get a documentarian or a journalist to come help me uncover the stories being told or that exist, so that we can connect them to the brand.
Mm-hmm. I think that is probably the best investment, and I've always been, when I was in the trenches as a practitioner, I was always I always preferred the documentary style employer brand video because of the richness of the story that we could tell, versus the sheen and the commercial feel and the no documentaries. This is people work, right? So we have to uncover and go deeper than the surface. The
documentarian I worked with at a previous job, she's a contractor, so she was doing other documentary. She had an ongoing project at the time. And that's the thing about documentarians; they're trying really hard to tell the stories that they care about. They would love to tell your stories to get paid to go do their other stories they want to do. And she was telling me about, she wanted to talk to this woman, and she says, ultimately, the only way I could get this woman to trust what I was doing, to say and talk about the things that mattered to this story, is I kind of had to live with her for 4 or 5 days. And I just kind of had to be around her and hang out when she ate and watch TV with her and just be a person near her. When we say uncovering and telling stories, that's uncovering and telling stories, not asking good questions, not coming up with the cleverest prompt, not coming up with the cool technology, not figuring out how to do it fast, though sometimes. It's about, how do you build trust with the subject so that they can say the things that are going to mean the most to what you're trying to achieve. That, to me, when I heard that story, I was like, yeah, there's levels, and I ain't even scratched the surface on that whole thing. That's
fire. I love it. I love it. Great answer. And I think people will get, I hope you take note of this as you're listening. Get a good documentarian. All right. On that note, it's time to leave a question. What question do you want to provide to our next guest?
Yeah, I'm going to go kind of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I'm going to go very current events.
Okay.
Assuming you should not, and the answer is no, you should not, use AI to write job postings and copy. It is a powerful tool. How are you using, and how should people use AI to understand, see, uncover, leverage, discuss their employer brand? How does this massive computational set and the technology on top of it help you do something better or more? That would be my question.
Love it. Love it. And there's no shortage of AI. I know we didn't get time to dig deeper into AI on this episode, but we'll certainly get you back in here. James Ellis, I can't thank you enough, man. I always leave at least 30% smarter when we talk. And I think, in true fashion, you've done that again.
You're very kind.
Everybody who's watching, please follow this man. We will link his socials in the comment section, and definitely leave some impact statements in the comments. But
I put all my resources in one spot. I figured people ask me, well, where's this, where's that? Like, I put them all in one spot. It's called employerbrand.ing, employer branding. It's 98% of it's free. There's like the books you got to pay for, and there's a class or two you got to pay for. But beyond that, videos, podcasts, articles, downloadables, it's all there.
One-stop shopping university of information.
Trying.
Is. James, thank you again, man. Be safe.
Keep
pushing us forward.
Careful what you wish for.
You don't have any more energy.
Careful what you wish for. No. I always have energy. There's always more coffee to be had. There's always more. They keep growing it. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. No, John, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here.